Israel just announced they might be taking over the West Bank, better known in biblical terms as Judea and Samaria, taking it back. They're already taking back Gaza. This is monumental. Is Israel going to be fully restored to its original boundaries? We're going to talk about it in our last episode with Rabbi Elie Mischel. Let's break down the news right now. Hello everyone, Jim Staley, Passion for Truth Ministries, and welcome to today's broadcast. We have an exciting broadcast for you today. I have in the studio live Rabbi Elie Mischel, all the way from Israel, Jerusalem, Bethlehem. In fact, Rabbi, welcome to the broadcast.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
So I'm going to let him in a very short fashion because we're going to get right into today's news. There is incredible things happening in the land, very prophetic things that are happening, and you need to know about it. If you're interested in end times, you're interested in biblical eschatology or where Israel fits in the timeline, and I think everybody, Jew and Gentile, kind of believe we're near the end here. We're getting closer every day. And proof of that is you have a rabbi and a pastor sitting in the same studio together, and we haven't killed each other yet. So that's a miracle in itself, amen?
Give it some time.
Give it some time. He just got here. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, Rabbi, I just want you to introduce yourself to our audience. Let them know who you are, where you come from.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here. I grew up in the United States in the Northeast and moved with my family 4 years ago to Israel. We live in the Jewish town of Efrat, right outside of Bethlehem, where Jews are not allowed to enter, actually. And so we live as close as possible to Bethlehem as possible. And I have the great honor of working for Israel 365, which is really the leading Orthodox traditional Jewish organization that works together with Christians in support of Israel and one another. So it's an incredible honor to be able to do this work and to be able to be here with you today.
Well, I'm excited about that. And so we're going to dive right into it. What's going on in Israel?
I think the question is what's not going on.
That's true. That's true.
In Israel today.
Every day we're turning another page of prophecy.
History is moving so much more quickly than it used to.
Yeah.
But some of the newest news is that the Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, has announced finally that Hamas is in no way interested in a deal, and Israel is going to go ahead and occupy, right, and retake all of Gaza, which is a major, major step forward in this war. And seems to be the only possible way to bring back the hostages and also to destroy Hamas. So that's a major, major step forward. It's controversial, but I also think that it's biblical.
Yeah, now let's talk about the controversy for a moment, because you have on one side the biblical narrative, okay, that God gave this land, which includes Gaza, to the Jewish people, to Israel. It's be completely biblical. Gave it to Israel. And take us back 20 years ago. Take us back of what happened and why did they give it over to the Arabs that were living there at the time? What happened?
It's one of the great tragedies and really one of the great sins of modern Israel is what happened almost exactly 20 years ago on the 9th of Av, right? Which was, we just had the 9th of Av, which is a fast day for the people of Israel.
Yeah.
And the saddest day of the calendar year when we remember the destruction of the two temples and so on. But 20 years ago, the prime minister at that time, Ariel Sharon, made the disastrous decision to unilaterally pull all of the Jews out of Gaza. At that time, there were many different Jewish towns built into Gaza. Obviously, the security challenges were significant, but we had a real Jewish presence in Gaza, and he forcibly removed all of the Jews from Gaza. And the Jews of that time, there were certainly the religious Zionist Jews of that time, and all the Jews of Gaza were warning, if you do this, it's going to lead to disaster. If we leave Gaza and allow the terrorists to take control, which is exactly what happened, it'll lead to tremendous disaster, and that's exactly what happened on October 7th. But there had been rockets and attacks from Gaza ever since.
For decades.
So this was a terrible, terrible sin of the government of Israel, and one now that hopefully we can begin to fix. Alongside of the Prime Minister's announcement that we are going to go in and retake Gaza, which is absolutely necessary in my opinion, alongside of that, there's a poll out this past week that for the very first time in 20 years, right? A majority of Israeli Jews now support, right, making Gaza Jewish again.
Wow.
Right, 52%. This is not a small thing, right? This has been a minority view for ever since 20 years ago. I was part of that minority.
Wow.
But the fact that now the majority of the Jews of Israel understand that the only way forward, the only way to bring peace is to settle Jews in these towns, in these areas. That's the only way forward, is a massive, massive shift within Israel and the Israeli consciousness.
You know, what's fascinating is if for those that might be out there and have bitten into the apple that the liberal media has put out there, and they will put out there, that, you know, Israel's the bullies and they're pushing the Gazans out and they're taking over their land. Let me give you an example. It would be akin to Texas, okay, being originally part of the United States of America and is part of the United States of America, being taken over by so many Mexicans that we decide, and they're constantly, complaining that the Americans aren't doing things that are helping them, and so on and so forth. So we send all this money into Texas to help the Mexicans that are there, and we even help them, with their water supply and all these different things. And they do nothing but take advantage of that situation, and they use the money that we're giving them to create underground tunnel systems and to build all of this infrastructure with the sole purpose that the Mexicans came into Texas, not because they wanted a better life, but they wanted to be closer in relation to the rest of the United States so that they could bomb and destroy Americans. So then we find out that this is happening, and we say, okay, we're going to appease the rest of the world, and we're going to pull out of Texas. So every American would then be forced to come out of Texas, and we're going to give them a shot. We're going to give all the Mexicans a shot. We're going to give them their own territory. And then 20 years later, New Mexico, Oklahoma, right, Arkansas even gets bombed by these new Texans that we gave them a shot. What would the American government do at that moment if 1,200 people were slaughtered, hundreds were taken into captivity, and our benevolence over the last 20 years was taken advantage of at that level? 100%, we would go in, take it over, kick out every single person that came in, and we would resettle it and say, you had your chance, you burned it, you no longer are living in our house. It's like a father telling his teenager for the last time, you beat your sister one too many times. Like, you're out of my house, you're never coming back, we're taking over your room.
And just to continue your really, really important parable, right? Imagine if thousands of these Mexican terrorists came from Texas and then went into all these other neighboring states and slaughtered large numbers of Americans, raping them, murdering them, children, men, women, and children, all of that, right? It's hard to imagine that President Trump would say, we have to feed them, as we go to war with them, right? It's insane. Yeah. Since when, right? In war, when we're defending ourselves, do we have to feed our enemy? Yeah, right. This whole thing
in the history of mankind.
It's immoral, right? If my grandfather fought in the Battle of the Bulge, were we feeding the Nazis and the people of Germany as we were fighting them in the Battle of the Bulge? I think not. Yeah. Right. So it's all up. We live in an upside down world, and I think your parable here is so important because it's so easy to sit in judgment and not think about what you would do if you were in this situation. Yeah. I think it was Thomas Sowell, who was one of America's great thinkers, who said that there's nothing more immoral than people sitting in comfort and peace in America, sitting in judgment of Israelis who are literally being bombed. I mean, this is what me and my family, along with every other Israeli, has dealt with for the last several years. We're constantly running into bomb shelters because these people want to murder us. Yeah. How would you respond right, if you were dealing with that situation?
And it would be very difficult, moving over to Judea and Samaria now, right? So there are people that, first of all, I want you to answer the question of who are the people that are living in Judea and Samaria? And is it true that on October 7th, when that great massacre happened of Israelis, that many of the people and the Palestinians that were living in Israel were having a party and celebrating this event?
Absolutely. It was a repeat of 9/11, right? If you remember, I'm not sure if people remember this, but I remember it very well. There's all the footage. You can go online and check it out. Right after 9/11, there were mass celebrations in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria, all of these Palestinians celebrating the slaughter of innocent Americans. And that's exactly what happened with October 7th. sadly, and this doesn't make me happy to say this, but the significant majority, every single poll shows this. And these are polls that are run by the Palestinians themselves, right? Every single poll shows that a very significant majority, 70%, 75% of Arabs living in Gaza, Judea, Samaria, are all in with their support for Hamas and the slaughter of Jews. Now, is there a percentage that is not that way? Of course. But the significant majority of these Arabs, right, that's what they want. They are not looking for two states.
Yeah.
Right? People think, oh, two-state solution. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just the Jews that don't want that. The Arabs themselves don't want that. They want a one-state solution, which is purely Arab, in which the Jews are slaughtered and pushed into the sea. So that's what from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's what it means. It means from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which is what Israel is. All of Israel will be Palestine. That's what they want. It's an unfortunate reality, but we have to look reality in the face. We can't pretend that the facts are something else, or that we would want them to be.
I just read an article this morning, my friends, that had a journalist interviewing an official from Gaza, and the official from Gaza said that we are going to continue the attacks like October 7th, and if we have to do 1 million of them because of the occupation, we will. And the journalist assumed that it was the Gazan occupation, and so she said, "You're talking about Israel's decision to occupy Gaza," and they said, "No, we're talking about Israel's occupation of Israel."
That's right.
That's what they were talking about. And it really took back this journalist, because most journalists are very woke, right? And so she was ready to jump on that bandwagon that Israel is occupying Gaza. And this person, this Palestinian, showed their cards that we don't care about the occupation of Gaza. We've always only cared about the occupation of Israel, like from their perspective that they're occupying our land, which is just simply not true, right? So at the end of the day, I believe that not only would America do this, America is doing this right now, because there were young people on college campuses that were chanting the same horrible death chants to Israel in support of Palestinians, and we are now deporting them.
Yeah.
Because we cannot have Americans or people in America supporting terrorism. And so for anybody out there that would believe that Israel does not have the right to deport people that are chanting death to Israel while getting the benefits of living in Israel, would you let somebody camp on your front lawn and use your internet while they're chanting death to your family? No, you would remove them as fast as possible from your land.
Right. This should be very clear, but for some reason, so many people, including American Jews, by the way, liberal American Jews have a hard time with this. And I get attacked all the time for saying what I think is a very basic and logical position. I believe any Arab in Gaza, Judea, Samaria that is either a terrorist or supports the terrorists who want to murder the Jews and take over all of Israel, they need to be deported.
Yeah.
Any Arab that is willing to accept Israeli sovereignty and live in peace can be a welcomed and valued partner in building up Israel. Israel has over 2 million Arab citizens. Not even forget Judea and Samaria for the moment, right? Just within the pre-1967 Israel, we have over 2 million Arab citizens who are incredibly successful, and doctors and pharmacists and lawyers and all of the above. All of it, right? They can make that choice and be part of it. There's no reason they can't. So I don't think this is a radical approach, right? If you want to kill me, you must leave. And if you don't, and you want to live in peace, we're happy to have you. And yet, like, I'm attacked all the time for this position as if I'm the radical.
Yeah.
Right. But would America be able to live with something like this? I can't imagine. It probably would say the same thing in your Mexican example. Any Mexican living in Texas who wants to live in peace, right, and be part of America, right, you can stay. And anyone who wants to kill us, you got to go.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this is not.
I mean, we actually have policies in the United States. Like, the Mexican cartel cannot leave Mexico and come set up camp in St. Louis, Missouri. They can't do it because they're on a terrorist list, right? So the Venezuelan MS-13 gang is illegal in the United States. If you are found, we will immediately arrest you and deport you, and we've done it. So this is not like without precedent. This is called demonic propaganda is what it is.
And I want to make a very important point as well. People constantly distinguish between Hamas and those poor Gazan civilians.
Yes.
The reality is they are one and the same, right? The vast majority of the people of Gaza voted for Hamas and brought them into power initially and continue to support them, right? This is where all the problems occurs, that we're afraid to look at our enemy in the eye and say who the enemy is.
Yeah.
We're not just fighting a few terrorists. All of these people, and some of them are suffering, some of them don't have enough food, although there's not mass starvation as people are saying. These people, right, frankly, they have it coming to them. They chose this war, right? On October 7th, when Hamas attacked, they were followed by thousands upon thousands of Gazan civilians who came and also raped and murdered, right? They were celebrating. Do you remember the mass celebrations?
Yeah.
Right?
In the streets with women and children.
So frankly, are we supposed to feel so terrible for these people? I don't, no one wants to see suffering. That we're not looking for that, but that is the natural consequence of declaring war and murdering civilians as they did on October 7th. So this distinction between Hamas and the people of Gaza is a false one.
Yeah.
And I wanted to call that out.
I think it's important. And I want to bring the biblical text into this a little bit because it's historical and God himself supports this concept because when he told the Israelites, when you go into the land, right, there were several cities, and what did he say? Annihilate everything. Man, woman, child, period. Which sounds barbaric. It sounds like really mean, and it sounds horrible. But the reality is that if you look through the lens of God who's outside of time, okay, like the Amalekites is a great example, okay? They were supposed to kill all the Amalekites. If they do, Hitler likely doesn't even exist, okay? Let's just be honest. Because God is outside of time. He sees the entire timeline. So if you go in there and only kill the men and you leave the children now see what happened and they grow up with a greater sense of vengeance. So now you've created twice the enemy that existed before you went into that town and destroyed the enemy. And I also want to make it clear for those that might be out there thinking that, wow, that's just mean to begin with. No, all of those cities had the opportunity to surrender. Like literally, if you read the text,
and the opportunity to leave.
They did not have to fight Israel.
Some of them did leave.
Yes, and some of them were smart enough. The gentleman that came in, remember they rode on, and they had worn out clothes and bread, and they deceived Joshua, and they ended up being their servants, and they were happy with that. Like they were completely happy.
And then people forget that then because of that, they were attacked by other tribes in the land of Israel. And then the people of Israel came to their defense and went to war to defend them. And that is actually has real modern parallels.
Yes, it does.
Right? They're the Druze people. They're a minority in Israel. They're neither Jewish, nor Muslim, nor Christian. They're their own religion. And they're a minority, and they are very loyal to Israel, and they are beloved in Israel. They have very high-ranking positions in the army, and many of them have given their lives for Israel. And so Israel feels, a very, very deep commitment to their safety. And that's why, if you've been paying attention to the news over the last several weeks, Israel has gone into Syria because the Syrians, who are ISIS, essentially, right? ISIS with a suit, right? That's what they are now, right? But they are ISIS. They were coming and they were slaughtering Druze and Christians in southern Syria
by the hundreds. And crazy, it doesn't even make our news.
It's insane, right?
Hundreds of Christians are slaughtered.
Horrific. There was one Christian family, the pastor, and his entire extended family was slaughtered. But it would have been 10 times worse, 100 times worse, if not for Israel coming, and Israel began bombing the ISIS terrorists who were coming to slaughter the Christians and the Druze. So Israel gets condemned for that, even as we're preventing another slaughter. But why is Israel doing that? Because Israel feels a deep connection to these other minorities, right, who are also under attack. And because they are loyal to us, we are loyal to them, right? And there's a beautiful relationship there. And it doesn't matter if the whole world condemns us. I am extremely proud to be part of the one nation on earth that is defending these people and preventing another genocide. I don't care if the whole world attacks us for it. I mean, I'm proud to be, to be a citizen of the state of Israel. But this is and frankly, that's really what America has always been. Right? How many times has America gone to war, not for territorial conquest, but rather to prevent a genocide, to prevent slaughter? That's what makes me. That's why this is such a great country.
Honestly, it really is the fundamental part of the Torah, of the scriptures. It's to take care of the widows and the orphans and those that cannot help themselves. That is what it means to be a light to the world. For us Christians, a lot of times we look at like our ultimate end game is when someone accepts Jesus as Messiah. That becomes the end game. But we forget the simplicity of loving your neighbor in the smallest way is just as powerful, according to Scripture, is giving a glass of water to David from Bethlehem, right? He wanted that water from Bethlehem, and he had to pour it out because he couldn't believe like the act of kindness was so great, right? Did it save his life? No, because he poured it out, right? But we forget that those small acts of kindness, and Israel and America are really the only main two countries in the world that care that deeply about other people. And I don't think it gets reported enough how much Israel stands up for Arabs and those that want peace. They support them with every part, like they're no different than the Jewish people. They support them. Israel just wants peace. And unfortunately, the world has manipulated Israel, I believe, put pressure on them over the last several decades, 50 probably plus, to give in. And giving in ways that those countries would never give in. But Israel's supposed to give in and give out land for peace, and even though no logical country would ever do the same thing. And Europe right now is making the same mistake with the Muslims, are they not? And they are now regretting it. They are regretting this woke philosophy of letting in Muslims, and they're taking over, overrunning their towns. I know people that live in the UK, and it says they're destroying every part of the culture of our country.
I hate to be depressing, but I think for much of Europe, there's really no turning back at this point. It's probably too late. The United States, thank God, is not in that position, and has to make sure that we never get to that position in this great country. But this is a real problem, and for this reason, I give thanks to God now every day. The war with Iran, which ended, at least temporarily, only a few weeks ago. The war with Iran left Israel as a regional power, right? For the first time, you can say really that Israel is probably the superpower of the Middle East. Right? Not on the level of the United States, and that's okay, but in terms of being a regional superpower. And that's so significant because that doesn't just mean that Israel is powerful. That means, now that all the air defenses of Iran have been destroyed and Israel can fly over Syria anytime it wants, right? The fact that Israel has freedom of movement all across the region means there's now the opportunity and the possibility and the responsibility for this great regional superpower to defend all of the persecuted minorities and the persecuted Christians in all of these areas, right? I see that as the future, right? This is what we want Israel to be the Yazidis, the Coptics, all these different, there's so many persecuted Christian minorities and other minorities all around the Middle East. And now Israel is entering uncharted territory where we're not only defending ourselves against annihilation, which we have to, that's our main focus, but we're beginning to realize, wait a second, we've got to step in. And this is what's happening in Syria. And I hopefully it's something that we'll see a lot more of. And eventually, I hope that the world will stop attacking us for it, but rather thank us for it, for doing the dirty work of protecting these vulnerable minorities.
The truth is that we're the parents of the world, right? Like there's a reason why Trump tells the other countries what to do. Like we are the responsible adults in the room. And that part of the responsibility of being an adult and being in charge and having assets and having armies and being at the top of your game is you're typically smarter than other people. Like you have a greater sense of morality and ethics. Your standards of life and living are higher. There's a pursuit, like the Declaration of Independence here in the United States, right? And so when you look at countries, Middle Eastern countries like Iran and Iraq and in Syria, it shocks me that the liberal women in America and the women's lib movement have not bannered to go in and save these women who are being raped and abused and put down and forced to be the least of society. At the very least, you would think that the women in America would be all for liberating the other women around the world that are being beat down and subjugated because of religious reasons. Right.
They're too busy supporting Hamas.
I suppose.
It's really astounding. And look, part of America becoming great again is taking responsibility. Now, it doesn't mean we're not saying that America's got to go in and make every country into a democracy or anything like that.
Sure.
We're not saying any of that, but there is this moral responsibility, and to his credit, President Trump, I think, grasps that and sees that, and that's something which should make people proud to be American.
Absolutely. Now, back to Judea and Samaria. Tell us what's happening right now in the Knesset with this topic.
So this is a major topic.
This is important.
This is happening. There's so many things that are happening on this front. And just the last week, Israel's Knesset, right, which is essentially Congress and Senate all bound up in one. There are 120 members of Knesset, of whom 10 of them are Arabs, right? Just so people realize Arabs can also be in the Knesset.
Did you guys hear that?
Yes.
Right? Of all the propaganda that Israel's against the Arabs, 10 of their top government officials are Arabs. Like, that should say volumes.
Yes. So a very significant majority, 72 members of Knesset, and there were many people who abstained, but a very, very clear majority of the members of Knesset and who represent a very clear majority of the people of Israel today, all voted calling upon the government of Israel to declare sovereignty, finally, over Judea and Samaria, what people call the West Bank, right, which is essentially the biblical heartland of Israel. I mean, if you take out Judea and Samaria, Israel is 9 miles wide. Think of that, 9 miles wide. There's a little strip of sand on the beach of the Mediterranean, and that's it. Judea and Samaria, where was about 75% of the Bible occurs in Judea and Samaria. That is the heart of the land of Israel, and it's high time, right, to declare sovereignty over it.
Can you name some cities that maybe they would be familiar with in Judea and Samaria?
Hebron, Bethlehem, Shiloh, right? Shechem. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Everything happened in Judea and Samaria.
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, you've got Israel finally, this is so heartening as an Israeli, as a Jew, to see finally the people of Israel have clarity and understand that without this land, we don't have a country, right? This is who we are. And at the very same time, you have the British, you have the Muslim nation of France, you've got Canada, right? I mean, and these places are being taken over by Muslims. They are all at the very same time, declaring their recognition of the fictional state of Palestine, which is insane. It doesn't exist, right? Who would be the leaders of that government? There are no serious Palestinian leaders who are not terrorists, or who don't support terrorism. They are all terrorists. So I don't know what they're talking about. It makes no sense, right? This is purely pandering to the Muslim voters in their nations. So you have that happening also at the same time. And then you have the reality that's on the ground, which is what is actually happening in Judea and Samaria. And I'll tell you, over the last couple of years, the world has not been paying so much attention. They've mostly been focused on Gaza and the war in the north. But the people of Israel have made massive progress in Judea and Samaria. No shame in talking about this, quite the opposite, right? There's been an enormous amount over the decades of illegal Arab building all over Judea and Samaria, where they steal land and they build illegal buildings on there. It's paid for by the EU, which hates Israel.
Yeah.
And so they send hundreds of millions of dollars every year to the Arabs in Judea and Samaria to build buildings, to create facts on the ground. They'll build a school. There may not be any children in it. They'll build a school. So you can't destroy a school, because then the whole world will attack us if we destroy a school, even though it's built on Jewish land, right? Jewish owned land. It's crazy what's been happening over the last several decades. So, but over these last 2 years, we've been pushing back, and brave Israeli farmers, right, who they have to sleep, with their guns next to them, are going out there and, like the old days, with sheep, with flocks, right? They are going and they are taking back the land that really belongs to the people of Israel. And the Arabs, for the first time, are running, right? They're on the defensive, and we're pushing forward. And so, alongside of the Knesset calling for sovereignty in a legal sense, right, there's de facto sovereignty that's happening on the ground, right? And which will, God willing, prevent a two-state solution from ever becoming a possibility.
So what does that look like in real time? So they took a vote, and the vote was just to see, is there interest? What is the legal process where it is now sovereign, part of Israel?
It's a good question. It requires the prime minister and the actual government itself, right? The Knesset, right, can call for it, but we need the government itself to declare sovereignty. Technically, I live, under slightly different law than other people in Israel live because I live in Judea, right? And so it's like still under the military control of 1967, which is crazy, right? Like we have towns, we have a mall in my town, right? This is not, you were in my town, right? You came, right? It does not look like, there's not a tent city settlement or anything like that. This is a town that's been around for over 40 years. It was established in 1982. It's got 14,000 people, a beautiful new outdoor mall, right? This is a real town, right? It's becoming a small city. It's the high time for Israel to declare what is already true. And so the prime minister has got, now's the time, right? At the very same time that all this is happening with the Knesset and with France and England and Canada, you have the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. You've got Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor of Arkansas. They are touring Israel right now as we speak. They're in Judea and Samaria. They're visiting these places and they are calling these lands by their traditional biblical names, which is awesome to hear. So now's the time, right? It's time for Prime Minister Netanyahu to man up, right, and declare sovereignty, and let's move beyond this issue. It's time.
The geopolitical temperature is ripe for it, and the people want it, and it just makes sense. So, that's why I do like about President Trump, no matter the other quirks he might have. He does operate by common sense. And common sense is, hey, why would we pay for young people to come to our colleges, our Ivy League colleges, on our dime and give them a visa only for them to shut the entire college down and support terrorism? That doesn't make sense, right? Men and women's sports doesn't make sense, right? If it doesn't pass the common sense rule, it's probably not a rule you should follow.
It's not conservatism. Like it's just basic common sense. And it is telling that it's somehow revolutionary that we're now following common sense in America.
Is there anything else that our audience needs to know that's happening in Israel right now that may not be all over the news?
So the part that's not all over the news is the internal transformation in Israel. And this is really, really astounding, right? Israel was started in 1948. Let's be honest, as a largely left-wing socialist country. There were two communist parties in Israel when it was first declared in 1948.
And it was largely funded by the Rothschilds, right? So in so many ways, right? So
from the very beginning, But today, Israel is a majority conservative and religious nation,
moving in that direction.
I mean, it's astounding and becoming more and more so all the time. It's almost impossible for a left-wing, secular government coalition to hold on to power in Israel. They can maybe get it briefly, but then they fall apart because the people simply are not there. And that astounding revolution, I mean, Israel's not even, the modern state of Israel is not yet 80 years old. And the internal transformation that is happening right now is astounding. The return of the people of Israel to mitzvot, to commandments, to keeping the Bible. I'll give you one example. And this is absolutely incredible. And there's a secular high school, in the Tel Aviv area, like really a bastion of left-wing secular Zionism, where the high school kids, they rebelled and they demanded the right to be able to put on the phylacteries, the tefillin, right, that the Bible talks about, right? They were rebelling against their parents and demanding the right to put that on. They wanted to set up a table, right, where they could put it on not just themselves, but any other kid who wants to come.
Wow.
Right. And the parents were freaking out. That should tell you what is the revolution that's going on in Israel today. I know in America, we talk about the Great Awakening. That was about 200 years ago in the early 19th century. Israel is going through a great awakening today.
A spiritual
awakening. And that is something which frankly makes me incredibly optimistic about Israel. And that's why, Israel needs to be the light unto the nations, but specifically to America. Because our next generation looks like it will be the greatest generation in modern history in Israel. And, we're not nervous about the kids, right? Quite the opposite. All the people at these left-wing protests, they're all old, right? It's amazing. The young people are incredible. I stand up when 18-year-olds come into the room with their guns. They're on break from the army. I stand up for them.
Amen.
They are incredible. So our next generation is our greatest generation. And that's where, I think we need to have a conversation with the United States and America, how to help our young people here, find that same vision and clarity, moral clarity
Yeah.
that the young people in Israel.
I don't know if everybody sees this, but we're moving in the same direction, like almost as if we're divinely being guided into a prophetic element of End Times Roundtable. Thank you for joining us for this broadcast. I'm Jim Staley with Passion for Truth Ministries. Make sure you leave your comments below. Share this with everyone that you meet and hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. Every Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, yours truly will be here with a broadcast. Typically, we are going verse by verse through a book of the Bible. Right now, we're in the book of Hebrews. And if that interests you from original Jewish perspective and the book of Hebrews, I would love to actually get your perspective. We should do book of Hebrews verse by verse together. You'd probably find some stuff that I couldn't even find. But in the meantime, guys, head over to passionfortruth.com if you want more information. Thank you so much for supporting us. And every little shekel matters in our world to help get this message around the world. Until then, I'm Jim Staley with Passion for Truth Ministries, and I'll see you in the next video.